All right, I'd like to welcome everybody to the Village of Cottage Grove Village Board of Trustees. We are having this meeting as a Zoom meeting, meaning that we are in both the room and on Zoom. We're in Village Hall here. The Zoom link is at the top of the agenda, and we do also have an audio call-in number there as well. With that, we have a quorum, and the agenda is properly posted, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, then, we have public appearances. This is public's opportunity to speak on any subject. If you wish to speak, we just ask that you share your name, your address, your municipality, and hold your comments to no more than 3 minutes in case we have a number of folks who'd like to speak. And we do have a person that likes to speak. So we want to put that on that? Mm-hmm. Okay, so we'll wait till then. Thank you. Anybody in the room or on Zoom that would like to speak? Okay. With that, then we'll move to discuss and consider our regular village board meeting minutes held on December 4th. Any questions, comments, edits regarding the meeting minutes as presented?
I'll move approval of the minutes as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a second, our first and a second then for approval. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Next, if the board is okay, we're going to move the agenda around a little bit and start with unfinished business in front of the presentation to the board, and that would be to discuss and consider the purchase of the ladder truck. So, Chief, I know you're here. You want to come up and just kind of talk through this? And then just press the little button with kind of the person there so that the people in the Zoom can hear you.
Okay, so I sent out this this memo, kind of outlining why we're talking about the ladder truck again right now. The current truck is scheduled to be replaced in 2028. Lead times on some of the manufacturers have now hit 4 years, meaning if they were ordered early now, they would be right in the 2028 ballpark for replacement. The manufacturers let you lock in your price when you sign the contract. Actually, I should take that back. Some of them let you lock in the price when you sign the contract. So this document kind of outlines what the cost of the truck is right now, what you'd be able to lock it in at right now for a 4-year lead time, and kind of why we went, which way we went with the truck. And like I said, we got a few different prices from different manufacturers to kind of show that it's not just the one truck or whatever. You guys can see some comparisons on it. So I don't know how in depth you want me to go through this document, if you guys had time to read it or not. Or
Does the board need to go through, you had a chance to look at it? Yeah. Okay, then, thanks, Chief. Then I guess if there's any questions from the board, since we do have Chief here regarding the ladder truck.
I guess I was wondering, so you looked at some other quotes from other manufacturers and timelines and such, and this kind of boiled down to the best option, or?
yeah, so like if you go to the last page, there's a chart with the 4 different truck manufacturers on there. 3 of them are all repped by Fire Service Inc. That's the E1, Ferrera, KME. Their lead times are not as long as the Pierce, so if you were going to go with one of those options, that would result in being an earlier purchase. If you went with the Pierce, that's the one that has a 4-year lead time right now. Our committee, when we went through the prices, the builds of the trucks, the Pierce is the one that the committee chose as their favorite. The reason for that is that we currently have 3 Pierce trucks right now. 4th one's going to be here in July or August. That would be the squad that you guys had already ordered. So it makes sense to keep with the same manufacturer just for streamline. All the trucks are uniform. They do allow you to lock in your price for now, so you'd be able to lock it in at this 2.152. And you'd be able to take delivery of it in to 2028 like it's scheduled, and you can pay on delivery. So the other manufacturers, out of all four of these prices, the only one that's actually fully built, scoped, and spec'd to our spec is Pierce. The other ones, they just gave us a rough price. They said, this is what we think you're probably gonna end up with. We didn't build it to our spec yet. So they're not accurate prices at all. The Ferrera and the KME, they'd be done in 2 years for their lead time. Well, the one would be 3, but when you start getting it out that far, they're gonna have to change the engine to the new emission standard. That's part of this outline here. In 2027, diesel engines are going to a new emission standard, so all the engines are changing. Any truck built after 2026 will have the new engine in it, which adds a significant amount of cost to it. So the E1, Ferrera, and KME have all been figured with the old standard emissions. So there's going to be quite a bit of cost added to those three. The Pierce is fully built, planning on having the new emissions engine. So that price is what it is. It's already fully built to what, there wouldn't be any surprises down the road, basically.
Quick question. If we went with the no prepayment at all, then the full amount would be due on receipt of the truck in 4 years, is that
Correct.
right? Okay,
Yep.
just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
And so far, that's how you've done it with Engine 3, the Squad. That's how the town did it with their tender. They did the full pay on delivery of the truck. So,
Sarah, given the lead time and that we would be borrowing for our portion, we would not recommend prepaying because you wouldn't want to take out out that debt, make payments for 4 years without the asset. So, yeah, we would not recommend prepay based on that. And Chief, if you could maybe fill it, there isn't an expectation from the department on a decision tonight, but just, looking for some direction, and the quote's good until near the end of January, so we have some time to look into this a little bit more.
yeah, that's correct. The town's going to talk about it tonight at their meeting too, which we're going to go to and talk to them. Nothing has to be decided tonight. You're absolutely right. We're putting this in front of you because there is another price increase coming. The E1, Ferrera, KME, those are all going up January 1st. The Pierce is going up February 1st, and that'll be another large increase, 5 to 7%. So that's part of the reason why we're putting this out in front of you now, because in the past, historically, engine price or fire truck prices would go up 1 to 3% annually, and so you could budget for it. But with the market being what it is, they're now doing multiple 5 to 7% increases a year. So this same truck, this 2.152 price, we priced it back in 2022 for you and presented it out here. We had all those different options. It was 1.7 million, and it's now up to 2.15 in the time of a year. In July, it was just over 2 million, 2.01 something. So it's gone up another 100,000 in just another 4 months. So we're just trying to put the options out there so you can try to plan ahead and maybe save some money on the long end of it.
I would ask, what do we have to talk about that we can't talk about tonight to get you out of here with an order? Whether it's tonight or January 15th, I mean, what really has to be discussed?
If the board, if that's what the board thinks, then nothing, but, there could be direction to look further at specifications and, make sure we get a second quote.
Yeah, if there's negotiation to be done with Pierce or whomever, is this like a best and final kind of a deal, or is there a?
Yeah, they don't do like discounts or negotiations or anything. They put together the spec of what, we asked to put on the truck, and then they give you their price on it. And like I said, the price increases have been based on materials, and, that's what sets the price. There's not like a discount or anything, which it would be nice if there was, because you've bought 4 trucks from them now, so you would think a frequent purchase would be a discount, but they don't do that, so.
The other thought would be, this would be maybe an opportunity for a worthwhile joint meeting.
Sure.
Between the boards.
Town and village.
Just so, for instance, I don't know that, not that I think they would do this, but if they approve a prepay and then the village says no prepay, then we're at a standoff, so maybe a discussion together would be helpful.
I think, Vince, I'm glad you brought it up. I think that from my position, I fully support purchasing the truck. Obviously, you and Chris and I are at the fire commission meetings, right? And we've kind of talked about this. And I think that it did come up during the commission. One of the town supervisors did bring up, do we need a ladder? And I think now is a good time. If there's anything worth talking about, I think it's worth having the conversation. Like, why do we need a ladder? I fully support it. Nick and Jess did a great job of explaining as to why we need a ladder truck. I think that for every village call, the ladder goes to every call here in the village. So I think if there's anything worth talking about, I think that there's that. But again, I fully support the order of the truck today. So Nick and Jess, any thoughts on that?
So having a ladder truck, it's another tool in the toolbox, obviously. Gets you to be able to put out a fire at a greater distance. You can do master stream supply, which is putting the aerial up and supplying water to it. It gives you an option of doing rescue if somebody's trapped up high or a distance away. And it actually gives you points on your ISO score. So for those of you that don't know, ISO is your insurance rating. You get points based on your fire department, and the lower your number, the better your insurance rates are. So right now, having a ladder truck gets you another point, which actually saves you money on your insurance. And we've been talking about it in the Joint Fire Committee. Currently, the village is a 3. Our goal is to actually get down to a 2, and we're taking steps on the fire department side to achieve that. So having the ladder truck helps keep that possible. They considered it a reserve engine because it's got a pump on it, so it's a bonus point there. And if you didn't have one, you'd be waiting on either some Prairie to come with a truck or Stoughton, McFarland. It just delays a tool that, sometimes you can't wait for.
I guess the only question I have is do we need to have an analysis kind of indicating what the cost to the taxpayer is, just like on an annualized basis for something like this? Are we done paying for the one we have kind of thing, or is this just kind of replacing the financial aspect of the current ladder?
So we are done paying for our current ladder truck. The existing ladder truck, correct me if I'm wrong, was almost 30 years old or getting up there.
2023, so it's 30 years old right now.
So
20 years
typically
or
the
20.
maximum our financing allows us to borrow debt for is 20 years. I can't speak to if we actually cash financed that purchase, but I know we don't have any existing debt on that vehicle. I had kind of just overall question on this vehicle. Is this something in 2027? Would we be able to sell the truck for any benefit? I'm assuming it's not going to be significant because of the age of the engine, but is there any anticipated proceeds?
Yeah, it can be sold. It depends on what you want to do for selling it. In the past, we've been using Wisconsin surplus, which is very hit or miss. The town just sold the tender that they replaced. That got around $63,000, which was a pretty large fee for that truck. But it was a specialized truck, very low mileage, pre-emissions. When we sold engine 3 last year, we only got 19,000 for that. So it's very hit or miss, and ladder trucks are really hit or miss too. Some people spend a lot of money on them. It depends on what people are looking for at the time. There are other options to selling it. There's other agencies. Another one that I can think of is like Brindley Mountain Fire Apparatus. They give more money for it, but you have to do some stuff to it. Like the tires have to be a certain age. It has to have gone through a non-destructive test on the aerial device before you sell it. But you can do some stuff to it and get more money for it, but it's, you have to invest more to sell it. So there's a risk that you're gonna invest in making the truck better to get more money for it, and then you don't get more money for it. So it's kind of a gamble on that one. So
Thanks. Based off of the age, I was anticipating 10 to 20, so nothing substantial here.
Correct.
To your question about future tax impact, in the next meeting, we can certainly model what the $2.1 million would be on the average taxpayer home. You know, assuming that this borrowing would be taken out in 2027 or 2028, depending on delivery. I will say right now, interest rates are fairly high for what we've been able to take out in the past. Good news is there's some indication that rates are actually coming down. So what it will likely be a conservative estimate that is provided for what the cost would be in 2027 or 2028, depending on and forward to paying off the truck.
It's a little bit, emphasize estimate, because not just estimating all the factors that could go into what taxes, what the environment would look like at that time, but also the payment would be based on equalized value at that time. So it's also projecting what our growth would be and what the payment would be.
I think my biggest concern is that we may outpace our spending, as we've discussed previously, at that time need a referendum just to maintain the services we have. And then you pile on a truck on top of that. What are our options to get out in 2027 if a referendum doesn't pass to just keep the services we currently have, right? That's my biggest thing, is putting something on the order book, on the books, and then not being able to fulfill that commitment because we need a referendum to buy it or something.
We wouldn't need a referendum for, this would be debt
Just
service
capital.
that we wouldn't need a
Okay.
referendum
Okay.
for the fire truck. If the operating referendum in the future wouldn't pass, then it would be other services that are likely not public safety that we would be eliminating.
Is there interest from the board to have a joint board meeting, or is there other information that board members need regarding the ladder truck?
Maybe we can see how the town discussion goes tonight, and what I'm hearing, well, I guess what I'll say, what I would suggest is that we sign the contract so that we have this ready for 2028 and we not prepay. So maybe we could see if the town is in a different place than that, and then have a joint meeting if needed.
I mean, historically, the prepayment has not been worth it. It's like
Right.
$20,000 saved. I mean,
they,
I don't want to speak
Right.
for the town, but
Yeah, I don't want to speak for them either, but
Right.
they have indicated they're not interested in doing a prepay either.
I don't think we've ever done, none of the municipalities have ever done a prepayment.
I think it's, make it clean. I think just approve it tonight, and if they change it, we can always come back to this body and.
You could do it conditionally.
Right.
Okay, well, I will make a motion that we conditionally approve signing this contract as presented and not taking any of the prepayments.
Second.
Oh, condition on the town voting the same. Is that an okay
Sure.
way to say that?
Lisa, you,
She's got it.
and I second. Yep.
All right, we have a motion and second then. Any further discussion? Having heard none, then, all those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Thanks, Chief. Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, since we're on a roll with emergency services and our other chief is here for EMS. We have item number 9.1, or I, in regards to discuss and consider the Advanced Life Support Program Intergovernment Agreement. Gotta push the button, chief? Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing this topic to be moved forward. So the intergovernmental agreement in front of you is for entry of Deer Grove EMS as a signatory to the ALS program. A little bit of history is the ALS program began in the county in 2004 with Middleton EMS, Madison Fire, Fitrona EMS, Monona Fire, Town of Madison, and Sun Prairie. So throughout the course of time, the members of the program have changed due to, like the Town of Madison dissolved. Wanakee is now looking to do the same as us and join. In 2004, if I remember history, we may not have been even paramedic then. So while since 2004 we've participated in this intergovernmental agreement, we've never been eligible to be a signatory or voting member of the agreement. With the way we staff now, with having 2 paramedics in Cottage Grove 24/7, we're able to be a signatory and participating voting member of the program, which is important to us. We're able to help guide the way EMS is run in the county by having a voice and a vote, whereas in the past we were effectively told this is how the system will run, and if you'd like to work within it, you'll have to abide by those rules. We are following the rules, but now we get to help make them. A question that was asked at the town or village of Deerfield would be, is there any additional costs or any changes we must do to our operation to be part of the intergovernmental agreement? And the answer to that question is no. It's simply that we sign on and continue operations as normal. There's nothing we must change.
Questions for chief?
Chief, is there a number of years this contract is for? I'm sorry, I didn't get far enough to read.
I don't
That
think
is
it
the case.
ends at all. I think it's an ongoing intergovernmental agreement that will
Okay.
agree to provide, have the 2 paramedics in Cottage Grove, and if we change that, then we would, by default, be out of the position we're in. We don't see that changing, so.
Chief, why did it take so long?
To get to this,
Yeah. No, not necessarily, because we've had paramedic service for some time. Why? And again, I'll say the quiet part out loud. Felt like we were kind of kept outside. And
there is
on the
actually
outside waiting,
a decent answer for that, and it has to do with the state of Wisconsin. It used to be that the state of Wisconsin in our operational plan required you to designate what type of paramedic service you were, whether it be 1 paramedic or 2. Right now, the state of Wisconsin, through the EMS office, only has paramedics, and you can be either 1 or 2, depending upon whatever you choose. You don't have to designate that by your operational plan. To be a member of the IGA in the past, you had to designate by operational plan that you were 2 paramedics, and that kind of handcuffed us a little bit to say we didn't have the operational freedom that if we had a volunteer EMT and a paramedic to make an ambulance, by the agreement, we couldn't do that because of how we designated ourselves. Whereas now, we didn't change our operational plan. The state of Wisconsin doesn't require us to designate ourselves as 2 paramedics. All we have to do is say that we will have 2 paramedics in Cottage Grove, and that's what allows us to enter into the program now.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve joining the Advanced Life Support Program.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion second then. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Thanks, chief.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
All right, back on the schedule, Andrew. So this is FGM Architects regarding the recommendations and presentation about recommendations for missile services, building phasing, and cost analysis. So
I'm Andrew Mayo with FGM Architects. I'm here to present the findings of round 2 of the municipal facility study. So I'm going to start out by talking a little bit about why we did what we did in this study versus the previous, and then we'll get into the details of the study itself. So just a little bit of history. You guys as a village have really started planning for facilities in earnest, 3 or 4 years ago. And since then, you've done a series of studies as well as incorporating this into capital planning, ranking different projects, different ways. And today, we're basically here talking about what direction you can go in with your facilities based on recent changes in population as well as future population projections. So rewinding a little bit back to the 2021 study that we did. In that study, we, as you can see, had certain projections of future population growth, looking at up to 15,000 population, and that's kind of what we based a lot of the facility needs on. So you can see here, this is the original study. So it was a lot of reuse of the MSB building, some renovations, some just reusing existing, as well as some additions. Since then, you guys have grown quite a bit more than originally anticipated. You can see in this slide some of those original projections down at the bottom there, and already looking to outpace those. By 2023, you hit the very far right projection of our 2025 number. Again, just showing you, differences between the 21 study and the 23 study. There was that rapid uptick back in 2022 that really caused us to hit pause on the original intent of this study and kind of reset. So the original intent was really to take another look at that MSB site and how can we best chop it up into phases so that there's a financial component and you're able to afford the project as a whole, biting off piece by piece. But since that population projected changed so much, we decided it's better to sit back down with staff and go over what these future needs truly are so that you're not stuck 10 years from now out of room again. Just another slide on how you were kind of chugging along and then all of a sudden this quick uptick. So with all of that change in population came change in village staff, both in Village Hall here as well as on the police department side as well. In addition to additional staff, additional positions, you have new leadership in certain areas, police department being one of them. So that led us to today, taking another look at your true space needs for 20 years into the future. So looking at what if the population gets beyond that 15,000 mark and ends up in the 15 to 20,000, where are you from a facility standpoint? So with that, you're looking at, on the left-hand side there, the original study, on the right-hand side, the update. As you can see, there's some significant changes in some areas. The two biggest ones that I'll highlight are police and public works. For the most part, the others stayed relatively the same with some conservative additions of offices and things like that. Whereas both police and public works recognized that with all of that additional population comes, for public works, additional miles that they're gonna have to plow and additional services they're gonna have to provide. For police, it's additional staff that they're gonna need in order to protect a larger population. So this study analyzed all of that and came to the conclusion that the most logical step forward would be to build a new police station, and I'll get into a minute what the size of that police station would be. But that would enable you to then reuse the MSB with some modest additions for basically all the other services. So I said I'd get to the square footage in a minute. So if you go all the way down to the bottom here, you can see there's two different police department options here. One of them is the original recommended 20-year growth projection, saying that in 20 years you'll need a police department that's roughly 43,700 square feet. Throughout the process of the study, Chief and I sat down multiple times and went over original space needs, and then, all right, how can we come to some consensus on, we know what the village can afford, how can we get there and still have an operational police facility? So we went through a number of different department resizings, as well as, what do you need today versus what's true growth. So Chief, I don't know if you want to touch on that at all.
So again, working with FGM, when I originally was asked to look into this matter, as he stated, planning out for the future, for where the village is headed, trying not to put the village at a point where they're literally borrowing and then having to redo a building again. That's where we're at the 43.7 optimal. We then sat down, still taking in consideration the needs of the department as it grows and the community as it grows. How can we most efficiently and fiscally bring something to fruition for the village that is going to last? And again, this is no knock on MSB in any way, shape, or form. The village took the steps ahead of time when they converted that building, but it's reached its lifespan. There's some significant changes that can't be made there to improve the efficiencies there. And that, again, if the village is looking at for the future growth, worked with FGM to come into a space needs that can be afforded, shall we say, in the best manner, and still have options for the future to expand when needed and when necessary.
Yeah, so Chief touched on it exactly. I mean, the space that they're in the MSB, we know the history of it and why the decision was made to purchase that building and to put the police department there. I think it served the police department well over the years that they've been there. However, even with current growth, without any future staff, I think you're out of room in the locker rooms at this point. And beyond that, there are some of the primary concerns have to do with safety and security of staff, as well as people in custody and things like that, making sure that you're not opening yourselves up to future liability. So that's why we recommended, out of all of the pieces of the puzzle, that be pulled out and put into its own building, and the others can backfill into that space with some modest additions.
Andrew, just to add to the, when the building was studied for the police use, it was recognized that it was likely obviously it's growth dependent, but they said you'd get at least 10 years out of that space, given the growth projections. So even with and that was with less growth than we've experienced, and it actually coming out to be even better than that, even with how that played out. So that decision, that was studied in 2014, and I believe they moved in 2015. So if this study is ultimately implemented, we'd be looking at 2026.
Yeah.
2026. So 11 years. One better, but the growth ended up being much more significant than anyone would have guessed at that time. From the 2010 to 2020 census, we only grew 1,000 population. So.
And I'll get a little further into detail in some subsequent slides, but really I wanted to give you a broader picture of the overall study comparing 21 to 23, as well as what the right path forward is. So as you can see, some significant changes between 21 and 23, the biggest one being a new facility. However, that will afford you well into the future, and we'll show you some strategic areas where you can grow to that 43.7 on the site. But you can see really, in talking to Cameron and his work with Ellers, he didn't seem to think there was a way to fund the entire project. So how do we cut out, a piece of the study and get the steps going in the right direction?
Yeah, and to your point, I ultimately I get the question, well, what's the impact on taxes? What is it going to impact residents? So ultimately, with working with Ellers, we asked for two different options. Okay, how can we defer this out over a 20-year period of time to either get a $150 impact on the average home or a $300 impact on the average home? That would be a consistent amount over the course of the borrowing. Ultimately, the $150 impact on the average home only resulted in being able to adjust facility needs at $10,900,000. Ultimately, even with the reduced scope of what was presented, not enough to be sustainable. We would likely have not even be able to address any needs at that dollar amount. So then we moved into the $300 annual impact on the average home, with a kind of a preliminary budget of about $22 million. So ultimately, when I went back and worked with FGM and said, okay, well, this $51.8 million facility is what we need, but this is what we can afford. So we tried to right fit a solution to get us through, this time of growth. One thing I do want to note as Andrew goes in the future, this was estimated at a 5.25% borrowing rate. If as I believe it will happen over the next several months, that borrowing rate decreases. When we're talking about a borrowing this significant, it's very likely that we may be able to afford additional spaces that, yes, we know we need, but were initially scoped out to make sure in the initial budget. So with that said, I'll kick it back to Andrew.
Yeah, so along those lines of, the trying to project what future rates are going to be, you can see here we have also included a 6% per year escalation rate. That is dropping as well. 2022 it was high as 15 to 20% per year, and it's steadily gotten back to a more normalized level. I don't think we're going to see 3% anytime soon. That's what it used to be, but at least here we're trying to be conservative with our numbers, understanding that this is a big number for you guys and you need to plan it out. So rather than saying, oh yeah, it's a $20 million project, and then we get 3 years later, and then things happen with the escalation and we say, just kidding, it's 22.5 or whatever it works out to be. At least here you have a realistic sense of what it should be, and then work toward that. So getting a little bit into some of the site plans here. So this is the original 2021 study. As you can see, there were two additions to the MSB. This was when we were thinking that we'd be able to fit everything in this building before all of the population projections changed. So then here's the study as it stands today. You still have some additions to the MSB. The Public Works addition to the rear got a little smaller. The nice thing about the space that the police department's in right now is there's office space for village staff growth, but then there's also plenty of garage space where they're currently parking their squad cars in that garage, which could then be turned over to Public Works for their use. So we were able to shrink that addition a little bit. To the west side of the plan, you see where we're projecting the new single-story police department. The white outline is 27,500 square feet, And then each of those dotted areas are a sum total of 16,200 square feet to get you to that 43.7 number. And we've kind of strategically placed them around the building so that we're not just saying, oh, here's your big rectangular addition, and then we've got an office over here that really should be over here. It's really looking at, all right, we could have an admin office addition in one area, an addition for patrol in another area, and then, the squad garage can expand as well. So those were all areas that took significant cuts during the process the chief and I went through, getting down to that 27.5 number. But because of the site, we should be able to add those back. Another piece that I want to touch on is, even though right now it's a very large green space, you can see that it gets pretty tight pretty quick. So something we would have to do going forward is to really start some of the site design and dealing with any of the stormwater issues. Right now, we're showing a stormwater pond that could be tied into the rest of the stormwater treatment on site there. Not sure if the calculation will work out where that's enough for the impervious surface that you're going to see on the site. It may be that we have some underground retention under the parking lots. That's all to be determined. And it's also using this as kind of a master plan, if this is the direction the village decides to go, to say, yes, this is, the end goal, and any projects leading up to that on site. I know there's some site projects in 2024 at the MSB, just coordinating those with this to make sure that we're not stepping on each other when it comes to the final version of the plan. So, a couple of paths here. So I'll start with the orange, which is Village Hall. So you've got some deferred maintenance to keep this building operating. I think that's been ongoing since we started, probably even before JJ had projects going on here. To get to where Village Hall needs to be, you could look at minor design and layout renovation for Village Hall moving to the MSB, where the PD would be vacating. Then getting through that, once the PD project is done, then you could move Village Hall into that space. Key here is step one would be a new police department. If you're trying to hit 2026 for construction, we're looking at starting fall of 24, winter of 25 for design, so that you could bid out fall of 25, winter of 26, occupy in spring of 27. That would then not only give you the space for Village Hall, but also give you that additional garage space for Public Works. So a lot of moving parts there, but kind of in a linear fashion. Just to give you an example of what I was just talking about with the design and construction schedule, here's kind of an outline. We're typically about a year for design, and construction now is somewhere between 12 and 18 months, depending on lead times of different materials. So with that, recommendations. So out of the study, working with staff, understanding the village's constraints, we would say probably step one would be directing staff on where you want to go from here and how that fits into your financial plan. Step two would be design and construction of a new police department. Step three, then you get to do some of that shuffling of different departments, where it's Public Works, then Village Hall. And then that last step would be planning for those next additions, knowing that it's up to Cameron to try and find the money for those. So with that, I'll leave this up here and open it up to any questions.
Any questions for Andrew?
So ground's not broken yet, obviously. I guess my question is, have we thought about, And I think of use cases in other counties whereby a new police department is built, or sheriff's department, or court facilities, or whatever, is that, I'll use Juneau, Wisconsin as an example, a small town, probably 2,500 people. And they built a massive police station, sheriff's station, and they did that in order to gain federal monies to pay for it by housing prisoners and things like that, using the facility for more than just the local police department. Have we looked at ways to generate revenue to pay for this thing potentially?
There are funding sources available, but those funding sources would be contingent on adding space for those.
Right, that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
You have to build
Yeah.
it bigger and
In
really go.
the scenario that you reference, the reason that occurred is because that's the county seat.
Yep.
So doing the joint facility was the county and the municipality, because that's already the home of the sheriff's department. Dane County obviously has their jail in Madison, and they already house federal prisoners there. I don't see them coming and setting up a new facility out in the suburbs here.
Okay, yeah, just curious. My father-in-law was the architect of that, which is why I asked. Sure. So,
Other questions?
It's been a long time coming, and I guess after seeing all of this develop over time, I'm not surprised by what we've seen. I'm glad we found a right size with, areas for potential expansion. I guess my question would be, maybe for you, maybe for staff, what our next steps would be? Would we invite Ellers to come in and talk about finances more? I mean, I don't know if we have a recommendation on, yeah.
I could take that. So back when we approved a financial management plan earlier the fall, one of the slides was to have, come back once we determine what a solution is, come back, put it back into our matrix for our borrowing. So ultimately, we'll restate some of that 10-year major capital project plan. Very likely to make sure just the overall tax impact, there'll be some recommendations on either pushing projects that were on their back and making sure that we're being very mindful of not only this project, but other projects that are going on as well. Again, we just talked about the fire truck on here too, and making sure we're aligning it so not any given year is not just an outrageous increase. So long story short, yes, I would recommend at a January board meeting, I would coordinate with Ellers. It may either be the second meeting in January or the first meeting in February, just based off of where holidays fall. But ultimately to come back, approve that plan, at least on the financing piece, so you know exactly with everything else going on, what that projected change could be.
Thanks. Yeah, I think we've already done a little bit of that basic work, but I think it'd be really great to have Ellers here and understand that before we, say, let's move forward with this plan. It seems logical to me, but yeah, just so we can go through all the financial aspects.
And then even after that step, there would be a request for proposals process for architects. So, that'll take some time as well, where, I'm guessing there would be some good competition for that. Staff would review proposals. If there's, a good amount of them, we'd probably, reduce it down to 2 or 3 that would come and interview with the board and go through that process. So there's a ways to go even after, or, if there's any decision to amend the 10-year plan.
Andrew, can you go to your budget summary page? Just trying to make sense of some of these boxes here. So like when you say 2023 study, is the idea, I'm trying to let me ask the question, then you can tell me if I'm asking it right or wrong. For the 2023 study box, the idea is that we would do all the MSB renovation, MSB addition, MSB site, and the new police department for a total of $51.8 million.
Yes, yeah, so that was to give you the entire picture of your facility needs and not just getting down to the, what can you afford to borrow.
So help me understand the the box on the rectangle under that, the idea is would we do the full, no, the 29.3 is for the full 43,000 square foot
Correct.
building. So instead of, I guess there's two choices, well, there's more than two choices here. The idea is that, do we want to do what's in 2023 study box, and do we want to do the full 43,000 square foot, or the 27,000 square foot building? Am I following that correctly or no?
Yes, and so we wanted to show you what you're gonna need for a true 20-year growth for your police department at 43.7, and what that costs today and escalated out 3 years. But then also what you can realistically afford to borrow, as well as make sense for the police department. We didn't wanna have you build this brand-new facility for chief to then come back and say, I'm out of room, I don't have anywhere for these guys to do their jobs. So we worked out kind of down, that was really the bare minimum to sustain, short-term growth.
And just so we're clear, Chief, like the 27,000 square foot building is enough that buys you time, but it's not the end all be all.
That buys the village time. I would project that you'd see about a 10 to 15-year life expectancy out of that space. Should the village not have the abilities to fiscally make additions before you had to start adding on, type of thing.
And so and I think I know the answer, but just for the sake of the record, right, asking, like, I want to ask this question. If we decided not to do any of this, what happens then, right?
What happens then is we bust at the seams, and truly probably will have some issues. I don't want to be the doomsday, but related to prisoner handling and bringing into our facilities for processing and things of that nature, or interviewing, we're going to start running into some problems there, in addition to having space just for our personnel alone.
Can you just go?
Locker room.
Can you be a
Locker
doomsday?
room, I can tell
Can
you.
we go the doomsday scenario here? Just because it's like when I talk to residents, right? Like they're gonna be like, hey, that's a big price tag. Could you?
Yes,
So
it
I
is.
think you actually need to go the doomsday route. And
Doomsday route is that we end up with either someone in custody that is injured due to the facilities and the lack of space and confinement area. And when I say confinement area, I mean just the space itself. Again, typically, do we bring somebody back that's combative? No, they go straight to the jail. But can somebody turn within a second when you're talking to them about a serious investigation? And in one of those interview rooms, suddenly they become combative and start fighting. They get injured, officer gets injured. We have the walk-through area to the officer's space is also where our confined area is. So somebody starts fighting with an officer and breaks away, they now can get into office space area. And there's obviously pens, pencils, knives, things that are used on a daily basis, scissors. We don't have it all under lock and key.
Right.
So.
Thank you. One last question, Andrew. Mark actually mentioned it, right, in terms of office space. When I've seen the several iterations of the MSB, there's always this courtyard that's added. That's 1,500 square feet of usable office space. I guess can you walk me through kind of the decision matrix, right, to approve that? Because again, we're looking at a very large price tag, and the building doesn't have a courtyard today. We're adding it to some that might seem like frivolous to add.
So the thought there is, obviously, it kind of becomes a staff amenity, not necessarily from the outdoor space, but giving more opportunities to have offices with windows. So that kind of best practice would be, if you're putting an office in a building, you want it to at least have a view of the outdoors. So that was the thought there.
I can add that to to be clear, what's likely to come back after Cameron talks with Ellers is we're squeezing ourselves to do the 27,000 square foot PD, and everything else is just a concept, and it'll be a different board's decision in a decade. So I think that's probably, for more or less, maybe it's a little bit less than that depending on growth, but in all likelihood, when does Village Hall possibly move over there? 10 years.
Right. Okay.
So that's just knowing the finances.
Right. No, Andrew, appreciate that too. Just again, because sometimes I get these questions are like, seems like a nice to have. For what it's worth, I worked for about 2 years in a windowless room. It does take its toll on you over time.
It's more of a closet than an office.
Right. So I personally can empathize with that viewpoint, but again, because we're dealing with public dollars, sometimes people don't necessarily have sympathy for that, right? So I can see both sides of the coin. I don't want to make either argument one way or the other, but just wanted to understand. But appreciate it. Thank you, everyone.
Other questions or comments? Otherwise, it sounds like we're gonna next hear about the finances.
Yep, so I'm basically getting direction from this meeting to coordinate with Ellers and bring back an official financing estimate in either the last meeting in January or this first meeting in February.
All right. Anything else from anyone else? All right. Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, then we'll move to new business. First up there is discuss and consider ordinance 10-2023, uniform address requirement. Assuming this is Aaron. Maybe.
Rick did most of the drafting on it, so I don't know if Larry wants to take it, but it was kind of a joint effort with EMS and fire and Lisa and myself and Rick. So basically, we don't have anything like this now, so it's always a little bit of trial and error when different odd issues come up with addressing that we don't necessarily have an established policy for, so this kind of puts those ground rules in place ahead of time. Just how the numbering is going to work, what the numbering on the building is going to look like, sizes and color contrasts and things like that. And this has gone through all the different departments and everyone's weighed in, and this is the final version that's coming before you.
And there are examples in the village where this would have been helpful, where there's a flip-flop on even odd on the street. As it turns a corner on a bend road. I know
just
one.
some of the commercial numbering with like suite numbers and things like that have not been uniform over the years and things like that this will address.
I can add from an emergency services perspective, this puts things in order for the future, so it'll make it easier and more efficient for responders to find locations, especially if there's a mutual aid from an outside jurisdiction.
Thanks, Chief.
I have a question, just because this affects me. My house is on a corner. My address is the front of my house, but my mailbox is on the other. Is that going to change?
I don't think we're going to retroactively
'Cause,
change
like,
anything that's
in
already
my mailbox,
established. It's
I have
more
to have
for-
my address, because otherwise it doesn't match the other side of the street. So I was just curious.
This is all go forward,
Right, yeah.
so no, it won't, shouldn't impact you. And I think most of the changes here, is this a brand, because I see track changes, but is this a brand new ordinance from top to bottom?
It's brand new. The tracking was just kind of going through the process with the different departments.
It all makes sense to me. I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 10-2023 regarding uniform address requirement as presented.
Second.
All right, we have motion second then. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. Next, we're moving on the ordinance train here. Discuss and consider ordinance 11-2023 for false alarms. So you mean this is from
I mean, this is
fire?
from fire. I mean, I don't,
I know even less about this one, I wasn't directly
I mean,
involved, but I
I
know
can
there's been
speak to
issues
this
at some
one.
of the apartment buildings with
right. I
frequent
mean,
false alarms that have been
yeah, I mean,
causing
hydrate,
headaches for the fire department, and this is
right.
prompted
Hydrate
that.
and some other, apartment buildings have been frequent flyers, let's call them, who've had, false, alarms quite a lot. I'm glad to see this. I guess my only question, Larry, is, there's been a lot of question as to who can enforce this. Is this a PD thing, or is this a fire inspector thing? And Mark, feel free to chime in too.
So in discussions of this, with the modification or readjustment to this ordinance, it would come to the police department for enforcement purposes. The idea is also to give the village a little more teeth, to hopefully generate corrective action by the violators sooner. The goal is not to impose huge fines on them, but to actually get them to correct the problem, so that we don't have a tragedy occur where people ignore alarms. Again, if the violations occur, there's certain steps where the fine will go up for the subsequent violations, and police department will issue the appropriate citation at that time.
And Chief, have you, are you and Chief Archibald pretty clear on, like, in terms of the logistics around, okay, here, we've reached this, could you please go
We've
issue a citation?
actually, I have an officer right now that tracks all false alarms and addresses them when we have those issues. So it will just improve that process.
Just to,
again,
oh, sorry, I was just gonna clarify, that the definition of a false alarm is like a systemic alarm that goes off based on something, not somebody calling and having a false alarm, right? It's a automatic systemic thing,
It's
right?
typically, the ones we hear about at the fire commission are typically the ones where the automated system goes off. Like, you know, at the apartment buildings, the carbon monoxide or the smoke detectors are going off. But
Yeah.
there's no fire, there's no carbon monoxide, it's just the alarm, the system told us to come and we came and there's no reason for us to be here.
It would cover if somebody chronically is calling in false alarms also.
Okay.
Right.
So whether it's an automated system or a person making the call, if it's a repetitive nature that does not have foundation, that's where this comes into play.
I think for me, Chief, is that when we've talked about this at Fire Commission for the last 3 years, it's like, there's always been a hesitancy, right? It's like, oh, well, it's clearly chronic, right? Like, we should do something, but then it's like, there's a hesitancy to go and do something. Hydrate, same thing. So, in your opinion, this alleviates that hesitancy, correct?
Well, I wholeheartedly believe so.
Okay.
And this is for false alarms, not only for fire, but also police and EMS, I would imagine.
Any alarm system.
Yep, thanks.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 11, 2023 regarding false alarms.
And I'll second.
All right, we have a motion second then. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. Next then, on here we have discuss and consider potential changes to the village board meeting schedule. This was brought up, I think, last time by some members. Because we're running into some holidays on Mondays occasionally.
Just when Matt's not here.
He doesn't want to be here then.
I think this was, even though Matt's not here, I think we brought, Sarah, you and I brought this up at the last one. It was more about, we're still having meetings on Mondays, first and third Mondays. There was conversation about potentially second and fourth Mondays, and I remember a few years back, we talked about potentially moving to Wednesdays. And I know that this kind of change is far-reaching and systemic, but figured it was worth another conversation.
Yeah, it does impact other meetings. It also impacts the ordinances too.
Right.
So that's a bit of the struggle. I think you're always going to have a struggle with whatever evening you plan these meetings, I guess, and something's going to come up. It's just, we have a couple months where we have, annual holidays on a Monday, and it's on the, hits our meetings, so we have to change. But I think, what are there, 3 of them, maybe? 2 of them, depending on.
Sounds about right.
So I guess, do we want to make the change due to that, or there may be other reasons to certainly make the change adjustments, but I don't see that one as a barrier, personally.
Lisa, can you comment on creating agendas and making sure they're out Friday before a Monday meeting? Because I think that if I rewind the clock back far enough, that's kind of where this conversation started, was trying to get agendas out. And I know we've put a lot of, stop gaps in place so that there's not that 6 o'clock PM on a Friday. Oh, can you get this into the agenda for Monday? I know we're not doing that so much anymore, but just can you talk about the pros and cons of moving to like a Wednesday rather than a Monday?
Sure. We have put some rules in that packet information is to be in by noon on Thursday, and that has been going fairly well. So as far as getting agendas and packet information, that doesn't seem to be such an issue. I will put the plug in also that a change for elections to potentially a Wednesday, even if it were a Tuesday or a Wednesday, poses a challenge sometimes. Even though a Monday is prior to, that's a little bit easier than after, or the same day if it were a Tuesday. And while that, you're dealing with it potentially 4 times in an even year, on an odd year it's 2, Mondays are much easier in my opinion.
My apologies, if there were
You
questions
have
for
all
me,
the
I had
work,
to
you have all the
I had to
homework from
coordinate.
this now. You do.
I do? Okay.
Just telling you. Never step out of the room. I'm kidding. Go ahead, Matt.
Oh, I didn't know if there were any questions for me. Chief mentioned that.
I have no questions for you, but I'm
Okay.
going to make a motion to keep the village board meeting as scheduled.
I'll second, but I do have a question. So January, we're planning the 15th is also King Day, which is the village holiday.
I
So
believe
we're-
we moved that to the
did-
16th at the last meeting.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot what we did with that, so,
Yep.
Yeah.
thank you. It doesn't often happen that we have holidays on 2 Mondays in 1 month, first and third. So
Right.
it seemed like urgent to talk about this because it doesn't happen very often.
All right, we have a motion second then to leave the meeting schedule as, for the village board as it currently is. Any further discussion?
It was just a discussion.
Oh, yeah, it was, wasn't it?
Oh, I
we got
guess
a
it was
motion
just a
on-
discussion. All right, sorry.
Larry, we have a motion second on the table just to discuss. Okay. We'll withdraw that then. But we do know what direction we're going. Leaving it the same. All right, next then, discuss and consider ordinance 12-2023, amending chapter 94, village board. You want to?
I can chime in on this one. There were a few changes in the order, and then we also wanted to talk about the potential of the second needed by a trustee to get an item on the agenda. That change, what's in there currently is what the practice is. If that wanted to be changed, you would need to make that in your motion, and then we could amend this and send it to be codified and published.
I learned the hard way this week that it takes 2 people to get something on an agenda. Thank you, Chris, for that. And I've actually thought long and hard about this, probably more than I should have. I kind of like it that it takes 2 people to get an agenda item on. I don't think it's a heavy lift. I could see why we're moving it. So I guess really what I'm saying is I'm on the fence, but I could go either way. But I think it gives a check and a balance to just because I think there's been times where I've wanted to add an agenda item, I emailed John, and John's like, well, here, you could talk about it if you want to, or, you know, and I never knew that you had to have a second, so, again, thank you, Chris. I don't know, I'm curious what others think, but I could go either way on it, but I think leaving it, I could make an argument pretty strongly for that one, too.
Okay.
One of the things, what we've seen, and I think you can expect more in the way that politics and social discourse are devolving, and I think in certain situations, you could end up in a situation where somebody's really trying, is a board member, but is trying to really obstruct the business of the community, and I think it's hard to imagine that with a board that's as agreeable and respectful as this one, but that's a real potential, and I've seen it and heard of it in other places. Having, you know, you might have 20 things on an agenda that are really just meant to eat up the time, or might be problematic, so.
That's what I was going to say too. I see a lot in the legislature. They load a bunch of things in a committee hearing and save the most controversial thing for last, so people are tired and just want to get out of there, and they hope they can slip it through. Overall, I could go either way, but that is one thing. I mean, maybe we could put a cap on how many things per meeting you could put on if it's only one person. But I don't know.
Again, I'll do credit to Larry here. I mean, we have to aim for the lowest common denominator. So if all of us disappear tomorrow, and there are people who are not as agreeable or not as level-headed as I think we are most of the time, I think you have to. That's what the ordinance is actually here for. It's not necessarily just for. It's not for Chris, not for David. It's for the people who may not be as respectful as we.
And even under the system of two requesting, board members have always been respectful of, you know, like I might say, you know, this is a really heavy agenda. Is this an item that you'd be okay with going on the next meeting, or even two or three away? You know, if it's not something that's necessarily urgent. And usually sometimes if there's background work that needs, you know, maybe the board member wants to prepare a memo, maybe they're not even ready for it. It also gives staff a chance to explain that, you know, while we work for the board as a whole, we do support you individually, but until there's direction from the board, staff really shouldn't be spending a lot of time researching anything. Our general rule of thumb is maybe an hour or two. If it gets beyond that, we feel there should be at least some direction from the board from a resource standpoint. So anyway, I guess that's long answer to say having two board members bring forward something is helpful. So.
Agree.
So I want to clarify, approving the amended ordinance would have the two, or it's taking away the two?
No, we would
Lisa's
have
shaking
we would
her
have
head
to
no.
add that in if we wanted to. That's not as it's currently
I thought it
amended.
was
We would have to
you.
have an amendment to the amended language, right?
No, I believe it's in there currently.
Is it? Okay.
Yes.
It's in there currently.
It is in there currently.
Yes.
So
It would be remaining the same.
if I want to make a motion and I want two trustees to have to approve,
You don't have to do anything.
I don't have to do anything.
That's so as written today.
Right.
So we can just.
I'm going to make a motion
withdraw.
to keep ordinance 12/2023 the same.
And I'll second.
Sure.
As presented.
As presented.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second then. Is there any further discussion?
If we're gonna keep it the same, do we need a motion?
Yes.
Yes, because
Do
there
we-
were changes.
There
No,
were
good, okay.
Sorry, I just want to clarify.
Yep.
So, with this motion, the code will remain as it was yesterday? Or
On that question.
on that question? Okay. And then we're going to go to the Chapter 94 next for the rest of it? Or is, because there's,
I'm sorry, go
Are there
ahead.
other changes you want?
there's, yeah, I just, because sorry, I apparently can't speak properly. 94.8 was removed entirely, from what I could tell?
Skips from 7 to 9.
Yeah.
Oh, it skipped from 7 to 9 before then,
Well, I don't know, I'm looking
Yeah,
at
it
the
goes
code.
7, 9.
I'm looking at the
and-
code right now,
and
and
then
it's
no
got
10.
94.8. Because the two attachments, I think, are both the same thing.
8 and 10.
I don't think it's before and after. I think it's both. One's the motion, one's what the updated
Right.
would look like.
Correct.
I'm just curious if there's a reason behind removing 94.8.
There was previous language that referred to Robert's rules and different procedures that were not being followed. So it was just basically cleaning up the ordinance to what is practiced with the board.
Okay.
And then it
so-
was the order of the agenda.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I don't really mind getting rid of A, B, C, or D. I'm just curious about E, F, and G. I kind of like those. Are we still able to do those if it's not in code? Requesting a roll call or motion to adjourn always being in order? This is just cleanup. It's not like preventing doing that and stuff in the future.
As Lisa said, the practice hasn't followed this. So you'd fall back on Robert's rules, which would allow for things like motion to adjourn,
Okay.
votes, things like that. So it's really a very loosely followed, at best, ordinance, and so it's just a question of whether you want to be violating the ordinance all the time or
Okay.
just go, yeah.
Well, and you don't want it to become a big fight about
Right, and
parliamentary
it does,
procedure.
and it really does, and really the parliamentary procedure, while you want to be able to use standard motions, I work for places where they fight about parliamentary procedure routinely, and it really takes away from what you're trying to do. That's why whenever you look at me for a parliamentary procedure interpretation, I say just, where do we want to go? You know,
For example, Larry and I are speaking freely, we're not being recognized by the chair.
He gave me a nod, but you
Yeah.
are.
I
gave him a nod.
You are in violation.
Yeah.
Okay, then I guess I'm good with that. The only other request I would have is next time we have a code change, if we could get like a comparison with like red stuff that's striked out or struck out or underlined thing that's new, just so it's easier.
And we do typically do that. This was
It was a repeal and replace, so usually you don't get that in there, but, okay, that's all, thank you.
Any other discussion
So we're going to leave it as is?
as presented?
As presented.
As presented, okay. Just want to make sure that the language is clear. Thank you.
All right, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Next then, E, discuss possible redevelopment in area of 400 block of North Main Street.
That's me, I think.
Yep.
So this is kind of weird because it's an open session and closed session, so I'm not sure what I can talk about here and what I can't. Go ahead.
I think the broad policy of what you're looking to have considered by the board is the purpose of the open portion. And then if there's will of the board to actually start thinking about moving forward with any kind of acquisition, or that's what we would do in closed session. So that when you get into sort of a negotiating position, we would do that in closed. But the whole idea is for right now.
Okay. So, I mean, most of my thoughts are laid out in the memo, which I hope you all read, but I was just wanted to have a discussion about, there's a house that's got a coming soon sign on Main Street. And you go through most small towns, you have a little storefront main drag that you go through. And it just seemed like it would be a good place to start development on that if we wanted to try to do that. So I just wanted to get everybody else's opinions on that.
Can I just tell you why I think it's a bad idea?
Of course.
It's just that I kind of feel like that part of town is where affordable single-family homes are. And if you want to move to Cottage Grove and you're middle class, that might be a place where you can buy a home. And then second is then are you going to start developing in people's backyards behind that, right? Is like, I think that's where if I lived on Ollie Street there, I'd be like, I don't want some development in my backyard where there used to be my neighbor. Those would be my two things. But I guess I'm not shooting it down either, just depending on what the other.
Yeah, I get that. Well, I mean, I guess the way I was envisioning it would be kind of I don't know how to describe it, but the way it would be developed would not be like super intrusive on people's properties.
Sure.
Try to maintain the aesthetic of, a small town storefront area.
You're not talking East Wash, Madison, Wisconsin.
You put festival foods in there?
No. This is, I think, and Chris, I think I agree. I think this is worthy of conversation. I think that if a developer wanted to develop that stretch of land, I think that it could make sense, right? Obviously, it would require rezoning, and there'd be a lot of conversation, and some of it would be tumultuous, and some people would disagree. I think I've knocked on a number of doors lately, and they said, well, what would you do if Walmart wanted to build a store behind you at your house? And what people don't know is I used to have a Walmart in my backyard in my first house. They were awesome neighbors. So I think, at first blush, everybody can be a little knee-jerk reaction, but I think if done right, this could bring a lot of value to the community.
I'm gonna throw something out there. If we're buying up these houses, where's our library? That's what we're gonna hear.
I just want to add in that I think it's a cool vision to talk about, what's potential, and it's our main street, and there is potential to have that kind of, it's the main drag. We have the separation from Old Town with the railroad tracks, so there's kind of that barrier there to kind of extend that Main Street feel farther to the north. But the kind of major roadblock I see here, along with the more affordable housing in that stretch, is it's not in a TIF.
Yeah.
And so where do we get the money? And, to have the taxpayers carry that for who knows how long, I think is probably the biggest issue I see in
One other item, just so everyone's aware on the context of the conversation, is even if the board wanted to move forward, generally speaking, Plan Commission is advisory to the village board, but in this case, it would take a change in land use and comprehensive plan. So for that, the Plan Commission would have the unilateral say. So not saying that they would not approve the change, but if they did not approve it, then there wouldn't be anything the village could do for redevelopment. It would have to be the same, essentially the current use. If there's anything to add to that, Aaron, feel free.
No, that's true. I think this is a significant change. It should have some public input and discussion at the Plan Commission and things like that. Not saying it's a good idea or bad idea. I think we'd have to look into it more to decide that. And if that's the kind of character we would want, but obviously that takes a while, and the parcels are for sale now, so that's kind of an issue too. So.
But I think one of them's actually contract pending.
I thought it was coming soon.
No, it's contract pending.
I think it's a
I
contract
bought an
pending.
off-listing house.
Really?
They
I'm
go
sure
quick.
they're both sold.
They go quick. I think that the thing for me is that I've religiously been hit over the head with how we don't have a downtown area, and even if this is where this idea stops, this at least communicates to the community that we are willing to think about this and think outside the box.
Yeah.
And I think that, again, some people might disagree with us. Some people might think this is a harsh idea, but that we can't get to that point and have that conversation without actually having the conversation. So I think I'm glad you brought this up, Chris, and I think it's a worthy research topic, and working with the Plan Commission. But again, it's not in a TIF district, so like the deck is stacked against us here. But again, I think it's worth, like I said, I get hit over the head constantly. Why don't we have a downtown? There's not, we don't have a heart of a community. We don't have a library. This is potentially a place where we could do something with a library, if we could redevelop this area. So like, in the library board's having to think outside the box about interim spaces. So it's.
Right, I think these are great ideas,
Right.
but I don't think that this is feasible right now.
Sure. Worth a conversation.
Definitely worth keeping a conversation and.
And for board members to know too, this is a good, and thanks for bringing it forward, Chris, is it helps staff educate too, that if any of you guys have an idea, it's worthwhile to bring forward, because this, easily fell within that, and Chris had an idea, we can give Chris feedback before even putting it on an agenda, a little bit of time for Aaron to research. He provided Chris with a memo of some feedback. We could have a little bit more discussion internally, and then, the board members can choose, then Chris could choose, okay, I want to take this path, bring it to the board. So there's a good process in place for that. So it's called a board meeting for a reason. It's for board members to bring items forward. So anyway, it's just an example of a good process, I think.
Any other thoughts on this, board members? All right, then we'll move to discuss and consider authorizing the village administrator to sign closed purchase of 123 East Cottage Grove Road. That closing's coming up in January.
Yeah, which one was this?
That is next,
Okay,
yeah. No, it's not, it's New Tech.
okay. I'll make a motion to authorize the village administrator to sign and close on the purchase of 123 East Cottage Grove Road.
Second.
Any other discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? And abstain? Motion carries. All right, next then we go to reports from village boards, commissions, committees. First up, that already covered Deer Grove. First up then is Public Works, Property Sustainability Committee. Heidi.
Yep, thanks. This one will be brief because I know we have some festival stuff to talk about here next in Parks. So Public Works, we met on Tuesday, December 5th. It was a relatively quick meeting. We talked about the solar panels for MSB. Are they, drum roll?
It's not quite all that dramatic, but yes, they're on, and at some point later this week, John and I should get an email to actually log in and be able to show, so yeah, just a slow trickle like it's been for years.
Those drums have been rolling
But they're
for a long
on
time.
and generating power.
All right, probably just in time for some rain, but no snow to cover them yet, so. We've also been talking about some lighting for the Glacial Drumlin Trail parking lot. So staff is gonna gather some information about that to see what that would look like for next budget cycle. We talked about the budget since we impacted some of the public works projects planned for next year with removing the sidewalks from the project plans. The street lighting on Clark and Grove is kind of an in progress. Not done yet. Then we had to work out some easements with pole placements. And then we talked about a really cool event that'll be coming up in the spring, Clean Sweep Cottage Grove event, working in partnership with the landfill to get vouchers for people to take hazardous waste to the landfill to properly dispose of it. So there'll be more information coming on that. Otherwise, I think that about covers it all, unless Chris, JJ, John, you have anything to add?
I think you did a great job.
All right. All right.
All right. Thanks, Heidi, and now we'll continue with that, with you, with Parks.
Yep. So we met later that week on the 7th for Parks. And so I don't keep this waiting any longer. We have a couple items to talk about with the Fireman's Festival regarding parking. So, was there a memo in our packet that talked about this a little bit too? Yes. Okay. So we have a little bit of an issue since the park has expanded. So we don't want to ruin the turf, but where are the cars going to park? So Sean, we had been working with the department to come up with a plan. I don't know if you want to come up and talk about the plan, or you want us to? Okay.
And Kevin, please
Kevin,
just
yes.
press the little button that's got the.
Yep. So we had Jason previously organizing, and Kevin has stepped up to take on the big job of organizing the festival, which is a big chunk to take on all at once.
It's kind of a giant job, yeah.
Yeah. So he's been working to think through some of these solutions to present and think about, kind of came up with 3 different sort of plans, but again, with the railroad tracks, it really creates kind of an access
It's
issue.
really kind of a tough job. We are kind of landlocked-ish down there. I did like JJ's idea of parking in that grassy field on Progress, but I think we're gonna be building a police station and stuff there, so that would have been a temporary thing anyway. It's difficult because people would still try to walk down that grassy path and go over top of the railroad tracks, and if somebody would get hurt, we really can't do that. Not a whole lot of parking to the east of the Fireman's Park. And even on Clark Street, there's not a whole lot of parking because we still have to keep that kind of free for emergency vehicles to roll up and down that street, an ambulance or a fire truck. So we kind of need to park in the same area we kind of have been for the last, I think, 90 years. And I think I went there and I talked to Sean Brusager and about an hour and a half that one day. And we're gonna park, I think, the first year down in that grassy area on the way, on the southeast side of that park. So we'll park there predominantly. And if we have to have any overflow, we would kind of go up on the soccer field, but kind of keep that to a minimum. We'll have people trained to like let only small vehicles and cars and stuff go in there. No big trucks or anything like that. And then if there is damage, the fire department wants to take care of that. So we could roll it, we could aerate it, we could seed it. We want to be good stewards of that area because we want to use that for the future too, so.
So yeah, we talked about some other alternatives and went through, yeah, parking next to MSB and potentially having a shuttle so we wouldn't have people going across the tracks. And then we also talked about the new flag football field area that was just finished to the west of the pickleball and tennis courts. The committee was particularly hesitant with that area, even more so because it's brand new turf and we just paid a lot to have it graded and prepared. And with it being so young, just it's hard to see that much traffic on it. I know MG Soccer Club is very nervous
I'm
about.
here.
Yeah. Oh, and Marissa wrote to us. I'm not sure did she fill out a form to talk, or she wrote us an email if anyone had a chance to review that email, and I'm assuming she'd be available for questions. So there were a lot of concerns about utilization of that field for vehicles and the safety and ability for the club to be able to use that space with their schedule. So it's a lot to contemplate, but we wanted to bring it here for the board's feedback.
So Parks, working with Kevin, decided the area right next to that new field. So running down kind of the trail, basically, right?
Correct.
And then that less developed area, parking cars there.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
And what's there right now? That's not the new flag football
No.
fields?
Right, that lighter green area is the flag football fields.
Okay.
So where the text is, the east side of that isn't utilized for anything.
Okay.
It's kind of that text and west that is the soccer field.
And we're gonna kind of stay in that area until the turf got established on the flag football fields and then probably go over that later, so.
So the area outlined for 2024 is not on any current fields that would impact soccer or flag football or anybody, yes?
Half of it is soccer,
Oh.
the upper half there, the western half.
And I don't plan on using all of the soccer fields. I want to keep it kind of in that rough type area, but I still want to keep the soccer fields in play. Just in case I can park a car or two or a couple up there, I can prove that we can be good stewards of that area, so.
Yeah. And so it sounds like you'll have somebody there that will be deciding which car is appropriate for,
Right, there'll be people there
Okay.
throughout the whole day. Monona Grove Football does that, and then they get to collect the revenue from parking cars.
oh, okay.
So they'll be schooled on what can and can't do, because we don't want to ruin what we kind of have going on, so.
Yeah.
We also talked about having some kind of agreement in place, just so it's in writing what all the expectations are, for both parties, to make sure everything's, set to what expectations are for both sides at the end of the festival. So that would be another thing we'd be looking to have drafted.
So I thought I had this well in hand, and then I sat down, I've read this, and I feel like I'm more confused now than I was before.
So when I look at the figures 1 and figure 2, their figure 1 has 2024 festival parking, and then figure 2 has 2025. Help me understand with Marissa's email, is Marissa's concern, and I think Marissa's online too, is figure 1 the issue, or is figure 2 the issue, or both the issue? I guess what's the problem statement? Like, which field do we not want to park on?
We can,
I can let Sean address specifically, but from my understanding from discussion with Sean, is this would affect our U13 girls field, which is the one that's further away from Vilas. And they are our highest level tier team, so having any damage to that field would just be not acceptable for that level of play. That's our biggest concern. And also, we would probably be looking to potentially have tryouts still in June. So having tryouts on fields that have been damaged from parking is also not going to work.
I don't know if that answered. Thank you, Marissa. I don't know. Unfortunately, I don't know if that necessarily answered my question. Sometimes it's not easy to hear in this room, so. Go ahead, Sean.
So what Kevin just mentioned is parking in, JJ, if you can hide that cursor, where his cursor is, that is undeveloped. And that is predominantly where Kevin had talked about parking cars. If there needed to be spillover, it might go to the easternmost soccer field, which is the largest of the two. And that's where Marissa's coming into play as far as.
Figure 1, correct?
Yes, figure
Okay.
1, yes.
So then help me understand, as a side note here, help me figure out figure 2 then, because maybe that's what's confusing me here, because that's about 2025.
Yep, so figure 2, let me pull that up. Figure 2 shows that they, instead of coming in off of Vilas, they would come in off of Clark Street and pull down and park in the area where they basically have parked since creation of the Fireman's Festival, basically in that area, but that, again, is athletic field. And that's my, from our perspective, I would rather not have any cars driving or parking on athletic fields. And that's why that one area in figure 1, if we're gonna allow people to park in the park, that is the most palatable. Things to consider too, though, is, as JJ mentioned in his memo, that path is not really designed for that amount of traffic going in and out of there. Kevin had talked about, staying off of the path and then driving next to the path. Well, then we're gonna end up with a road there instead of on the path. So two-way in and out would be a little bit difficult.
I am having a hard time visualizing this. When you're talking about paths, and is this the little stretch from Vilas in that you're talking about, Sean?
Yes.
And
Yep,
so there's currently path there?
Correct. Yep.
And the worry is that it would, having more and more traffic on that would make it look like an intentional.
Well, the path is not built for that kind of traffic, so even if we stayed off of it, we would end up with a road kind of next to the path. Yeah, and then it becomes, the ideal, the best part about all of this is that short of the tryouts in June, the space isn't really used that time of year. We're more spring and fall, so it would give us ample time to try and get things to grow and things cleaned up a little bit, if that's the direction you wanted to go.
but the figure 2 is the new flag football fields that were just graded, seeded. So driving cars, using that option in 2024 is like kind of out of it because we would have to wait until the grass is more established. So that's why it's the 2025 festival figure.
I think the nice part here, Kevin knows a thing or two about turf and.
Yeah, I've been on the fire department for 17 years. I've been on the Parks and Rec Committee for 10. I've been doing all the turf for the village for the last 8 years. So if there's one person that can kind of put this all together, it's probably me, so.
I guess, Kevin, help me understand, because again, you own your own landscaping business, right? So like, I'm reading the memo here and it says, at worst case scenario, $40,000 to repair. I mean, you're running the Fireman's Fest. You're also, you could do the repairs, right? So I mean, like, I'm just curious on your take, right? Like, give me best case, worst case scenario.
Worst case scenario, maybe it'd start to rain maybe when we have cars parked out there. The cars will drive on it and the mud will come up Then after the festival, we would have to roll it, aerate it, and seed it, which is something that we would be willing to do. It's kind of good for an athletic field anyway to seed it or to overseed it every year, every other year anyway. But then if it's dry, there'll be no damage. You know, maybe we have to put a water wheel out or something like that. I mean, there have been years, we've been parking cars over there for a lot of years. Even during the Fireman's Festival, we had these like 40,000-pound rides that we put in that grassy field. They really don't damage the turf. Take a couple weeks for it to come back, but everything is kind of at a minimum. Worst case scenario, we have to roll it, aerate it, and seed the whole thing. Might cost the department a couple $1,000s in seed, but that's something that we're willing to kind of do.
And can I ask, would we have a backup for, let's say, worst case scenario happened and we couldn't get it reseeded and all these things before the tryouts? Do we have another space we could allow Monona Grove Soccer to hold their tryouts as a backup plan?
We'd probably have to ask to shift them to North Lawn, but yes. Yep.
Is the whole problem here is like people crossing those train tracks? Is that really what we're talking? I mean, can we not have something like a crossing guard there or something? I mean,
Unfortunately, it's railroad property, you'd have to get permission from
is that
federal railroad police, and I can tell you right now, they are not going to authorize you to.
there used to be a path that went through
That's
there.
why it's gone.
Yeah.
Oh, well, somebody just asked me, whatever happened to that
Straight and
path?
simple.
Right, and a lot of the problem too is people remember that path over there. So if we put cars up there, they're gonna wanna try to walk down that path. And hey, the path's not here, they'll walk down that, ditch, and it's just a big dirt water hole, so it's
I
not
mean,
safe.
they do that either way.
I mean, I think, Sarah, I'm with you, right? Like, and Marissa, I don't know if you're still online or not, but if I'm trying to find a happy medium or a happy compromise here. If we could have an alternative option, would that? Again, I know this is not the most ideal, and I do thank you for your email, but I'm just trying to. How do we satisfy everybody, all stakeholders here? If we could, if we offered up North Lawn as a possible compromise, could that potentially satisfy your concerns, Marissa?
That I'm not sure of. I would have to take that to my board and speak with our director of coaching. I think North Lawn, I don't know that North Lawn will have enough space to house how many, would house the tryouts, in all honesty. Because I know right now we only have one practice field out there, and it has to be smaller than what regulation is.
Another thought the committee had was if there was a lot of rain, like in the weeks leading up to the festival, that we could change the parking situation and do the MSB and communicate that to the community that we're going to have to, and you'll have to walk a couple blocks, or if it's possible to arrange for a school bus shuttle to just drive around the block or something along those lines. If for some reason it's record-breaking spring and we'd create huge ruts in the fields that would be really difficult to repair.
Yeah, I mean, I want to avoid that at all costs. If it's going to be wet, I don't want to drive on it. If there's rain in the forecast, we're not going to park out there. We're going to keep things at a minimum. So, yeah, it's going to be difficult because then we're kind of getting rid of the parking that we have, but at least we can still kind of use the lot off of Grove, all the parking on Clark and stuff like that. Maybe have more people park in the neighborhoods, stuff like that. If it's going to rain, people usually don't come out to the festival anyway. So, if it's going to thunderstorm, get off the fields,
Did you guys talk to any school bus companies to see how much that might cost?
Yeah, Kevin had put a quote, it was a couple thousand.
Yeah, it was like $3,500, and that was for one bus going up and down Clark and Grove Street. But if we wanted to add a bus, it would be, double that. Or if we wanted to go to a different location, we're really kind of against parking over in that lot because it was going to be a temporary thing anyway because the police station's going to be there. And we want to kind of keep it far enough away that we don't have people trying to mitigate or walk across the railroad tracks. If one person got hurt, we just did all this for nothing, so.
I guess I'm thinking that this is going to be a reoccurring thing that's going to come up. And I do agree with Kevin's statement that you've been good partners in the past, and I think are committed to being good partners going forward. And I think if we had a contract in place as recommended, if weather is terrible and the turf would be ruined, you won't send cars on there. You're gonna focus most of the parking on the, I don't know my directions, is that south, west, east, the bottom?
Southeast, yeah.
Southeast part, yes, thank you for that cursor, and that's where majority, and that is not soccer fields. And I feel like with those pieces in place, I don't love it, but I also don't have any other better idea.
That sounds like a motion to me.
That did it.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Just a question. Well, is there direction on 2025, or are you sticking with the 2024?
I only think 1 year.
Going forward.
1 year at a time, man.
Alright.
1 year at a time.
All right.
And though I do hear Sean's concern about the entry. I mean, which is worse, people driving on the path or there being a secondary looking road for a while? It feels like the worst would be driving on the path, but what is?
I don't know how it could be, in order to get cars in and out both directions, I think you're gonna end up using both. You know, two-way traffic in and out of that same spot. Kevin, can you?
Right, so if you would drive into the parking lot for the splash pad, Bakken Park, there are some, there's some mulch and then there's some limestones, like boulders. We would move a boulder, one or two of the boulders to the left or the right, and we would have entrances coming in. Then we wouldn't have three entrances coming off of Violence Road. It wouldn't be safe. And then we would lay down sheets of plywood across the bike path, so we wouldn't damage that, and then kind of get over it and then shoot down along the grass.
Seems reasonable to me. I mean,
It's a bit of work, but we're willing to do it so we can keep the Fireman's Festival and the Cottage Grove Festival going for years to come. 8 more years, we're at 100, so we're pretty close.
I mean, Kevin, you seem reasonable. You're willing to fix it if something breaks. I can't. And again, I'm with you, Sarah. Like, it's nothing to love here, right? Like, it's not an ideal scenario. I wish I had a parking ramp, an 8-story parking ramp to give you, but I don't, right? So I think, like you said, when we put the contract in place, you're willing to fix it if it breaks. It's hard to say no.
We have a motion second. Then any other discussion?
Yeah, I have a question. You're kind of setting a precedent as we get more and more events that are starting to pop in, and we are getting a few more that have inquired about 2024. Is this something that is just specific to the Fireman's Festival, or is this specific to anybody that wants to park there?
I'm not going to speak for anybody here, but a wise attorney, Larry, once told me that when we make a decision here, we don't set precedent.
Sean's asking you to answer the question of whether or not,
Yeah.
when he gets questions from someone else, what should he say?
I would say this is for fire department only, based
Correct.
on a 90-year history and partnership. If they can top that, I'm happy to talk with them.
Yeah.
On their committee, then sure.
Does that help, Sean?
Yep.
Okay.
Tell
All right.
everybody else no.
Any other discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then? Aye. Anybody opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. Thanks, guys.
Good luck planning the festival. We look forward to the summer. Thank you. So then the other discuss and consider we have this evening from Parks is regarding the dogs in the park ordinance, which the committee approved the language that was drafted based on the board's direction from our last discussion on this. The ordinance is attached, and it went back to Sean and Chief to figure out how to word it according to our direction without going on playground facilities, fields that are in use, the list of items where we wanted to make sure dogs weren't.
Yep, we basically just went by Chris's recommendation, and Chief felt good about it, and committee felt good about it, so we just kind of took that language.
Make a motion to approve ordinance 13, 2023 about pets in parks.
Second.
We have motion second then. Any further discussion?
Yes.
You have another question? This is not a usage question.
Sign change. We're looking at about $2,500 in updating signage in our parks, and that's not something that we budgeted for. Just wondering if anybody had any thoughts on doing that, or Cameron, where can we pull that from, if possible?
Can you just put duct tape over the part that says no
Say it.
dogs?
Or ask businesses to donate and put their logo on the bottom.
A couple options. You know, the park development fund certainly has some unrestricted funds that it could be used. Additionally, I guess we could potentially look into some sponsorship as well for signage, but I think ultimately we just need to have some additional discussion, knowing that 2,500-ish, you know, wasn't budgeted for this change.
There's doesn't have to be a crazy sense of urgency to
No,
install the signage.
I can get better quotes too and come back and we can talk about where that's gonna come from. So that's just an estimate at this point until we had the verbiage down.
All right, any other discussion? Having heard none, or any additional, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Heidi, anything else?
Yeah, we talked about a couple other things more briefly. So the Monona Grove baseball team, as many of you may or may not know, play at the Fireman's Park field. That's their home field. And they're great partners. They help with scoreboard, maintenance. There's a long list of things that they do in partnership to make this a great home for their baseball team. So they're looking to put a banner on the concrete stairs at Fireman's Park. As kind of a spirit with an eagle or MG, I can't remember the graphic. So we're gonna discuss that more about what that could look like. So we have space in case another like home talent would wanna have something in that space also.
It was a silver eagle, by the way.
A silver eagle, all right. Yes, you're right. Then we have a concrete bag toss game that's going to be installed at Fireman's Park with the Community Foundation donations. So we approved the location of that. Most people bring a bag toss, but that would be a great amenity to add. People don't have to haul their bag toss to a party. So that's great. The Community Foundation is looking to donate an amenity like that.
Is that gonna have bags along with it?
Yep.
Or, okay.
They'll have to kind of check them out, but most people, or they can bring their own.
Otherwise, most everything's wrapped up from our projects. I don't have anything else, Sean, unless you had anything else to add.
No, you got it.
All right.
Thanks, Heidi. Next then, we have Plan Commission. We met on the 13th. There is a discuss and consider on here, which we'll get to in a moment. I'll just run through the rest of this. That was pretty much the meeting, actually. So there was nothing else, now that I remember and look at the agenda. So with that, it looks like we do have some folks from the school here. So Dan, you want to pop up and talk about the array?
Sure.
And then we'll have.
If I remember from last Wednesday what to do here to speak into the microphone. Hi, everybody. Good evening. I'm Sean Curry with McKinstry. We are an energy service company in Madison, Wisconsin, and working with Monona Grove School District since 2009, working on energy efficient projects with the school district. So we're here today for, I'm sorry, I want to introduce Dan here.
Dan Olson, Superintendent for the school district.
So we're here today to look at requesting approval from the village board to install a new solar ground mount system at Granite Ridge Elementary School. We was here last Wednesday with the planning commission, working with Aaron and staff, as we presented the solar PV system for the school district. So here to answer any questions that you may have, but basically it meets the requirements for the code ordinance with the village, comprehensive plan as well, and then helping, working towards Minot Grove School District sustainability goals and plans.
Aaron, do you want to cover staff?
Yeah, don't have too much to add. A couple years ago, we worked with the Sustainability Committee at the time to kind of bring our zoning ordinance up to date with the technology and make, projects like this more specifically allowed and approvable. So this is permitted by right in this district. From a planning perspective, we didn't have too many concerns about it. Just wanted to kind of double check the plantings that are going to go in around the array. I see Josh is on here. There were some minimal engineering conditions as well, if you want to touch on those, Josh. But otherwise, this was approved by the Plan Commission, and we'd recommend approval as well.
Yeah, just the simple thing with something the DNR enacted a couple years ago is the actual stormwater management for ground-mounted solar standards, which has been new. It should be pretty easy to kind of develop and maintain here along this part, but we're just asking for kind of a stormwater management plan to be submitted for that. A lot of it has to do with just the runoff of the water after it hits these solid panels. The way that's usually addressed is vegetative buffers underneath the panels. They really stress or suggest sort of that prairie plantings that go underneath the panels. We're just kind of looking for a little bit more information on that, but it should be something that can be provided.
I guess if I can jump back in, the Plan Commission did add one additional condition that wasn't in the staff reports. They were just looking for a little more landscape screening along Bus Road to help block the view of the array from the neighborhood across the street.
Commission clarified that we didn't want to block the solar panels, just the light to the solar panels, but just more of a kind of a visual thing. The panels of this array will go along that service road that's furthest as you go in towards further on to Bus Road, so kind of running along that. So it'll still be plenty of space out there for whatever future the school district plans for that land.
And I may add that there will be a 7-foot high chain link black vinyl fence that will secure with a gate, lock gate, to secure that from the surrounding area. But there'll be enough space and buffer around there for maintenance vehicles to get in and out. And as Josh was saying, that pollinator habitat is what we're looking to plant underneath the panels that would minimize, max them out at 4 foot high, but would be maintained, spot treated, and ensure that we're not blocking sun rays to hit the panels.
And it's going to save the district money in the long run too, so this is win-win. I don't want to cut off anyone's questions, but I would make a motion to approve the request from Minot Grove School District for site plan amendment to add ground-mounted solar array at Granite Ridge Elementary School located at 4500 Bus Road with staff and commission conditions.
Second.
I do have a question, actually. I noticed in the Plan Commission comments that Troy Allen asked if the project cost included in the 2024 district budget, or was this on top of the tax increase? Said you replied you weren't sure about the financing. I think, Dan, since you're here, could you comment on that?
Sure, glad to. Yeah, this will be financed through our normal operating budget.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, with that, then, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Thank you.
Great,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
All right, that was it for Plan Commission. Next, then, we have reports from village officers, starting with Larry. All right. Then we have Deputy Administrator or Deputy Administrative Services.
The long-awaited summary of the community survey from 8 months ago. I don't know if there's any questions. Gave kind of a high-level executive summary. This is meant to be a tool that's really valuable over the long term. You kind of ask general questions about your existing services and monitor, how you're doing. So we do have most likely some modest changes recommended for the survey that'll come out in the first quarter. We'll bring those back here in the next couple of meetings and get board thoughts on that. But overall, aside from maybe those couple that we're going to want to tweak how we ask, pretty positive view of the services provided by the government.
Was that sent out?
Oh. Yep, it's got all the results and just a summary in the first couple pages of the memo.
All right, any questions for JJ? All right, thanks, JJ. Next then, communication, miscellaneous business. First up, the consideration for the vouchers.
Make a motion to pay the bills as written.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Motion second then. Any other discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Correspondence, I didn't have any. Anybody else? Upcoming committee events? Everybody spending time with family and friends over the holidays, hopefully. Nothing I can think of. Now we get into the frozen zone. Future agenda items. Matt, anything you want to call out? We're not meeting the first part of January, so we're going to have probably a heavier meeting, and that's the second meeting in January.
Yes, we'll plan on it being a pretty big agenda, but no fancy preview right now.
All right. Too far out. Stay tuned. All right, with that then, we can move into the multiple closed session items here. So we'll do motion and second, then do the roll call, and then move on to the next one. So first up then, make a motion that the village goes into closed session regarding the negotiation position to Deer Grove EMS intergovernment agreement. To the Village of Cottage Grove Board will enter closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 19.85, parentheses 1, parentheses E, deliberating and negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or the conducting of other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, David. Lisa?
Ballwig.
Aye.
Murphy.
Aye.
Peterson.
Aye.
Stoa. Valencia.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
And Wittig.
All right, so in the next closed session then, we will make a motion that go into closed session regarding the potential land acquisition of TID number 9 and establishing a negotiating position for 612 North Main Street. The Village of Cottage Grove will enter closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 19.85, parentheses 1, parentheses E, deliberating and negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing in public funds, the conducting of other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Is there a second?
Second.
Stoa.
Yes.
Valencia.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Wittig.
Aye.
Ballwig.
Aye.
Murphy. And Peterson.
Aye.
All right, next one then, closed session. This is a closed session regarding potential purchase of property. The Village of Cottage Grove will enter a closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 19.85, parentheses 1, parentheses E, deliberating, negotiating, purchasing public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business where competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Is there a second?
Second.
All right.
Wittig. Williams.
Aye.
Valencia.
Aye.
Stoa.
Yes.
Peterson.
Aye.
Murphy. And Ballwig.
Aye.
All right, next motion then for closed session. Closed session is in regards to agreement of sale of restoration of former Gaston School building. The Village of Cottage Grove board will enter a closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 19.85, parentheses 1, parentheses E, deliberating, negotiating, and purchasing public properties, the investing of public funds, the conducting of other specified public business wherever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Is there a second?
Second.
David?
Williams,
Aye.
Whittig, Ballwig,
Aye.
Murphy, Peterson,
Aye.
Stoa,
Yes.
and Valencia.
Aye.
All right, we've reconvened from open session, or from closed session to open session. And there is a discuss and consider on the agenda.
I make a motion to purchase 612 North Main Street in Cottage Grove, Wisconsin.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and second then. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Any abstains? Motion carries.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and second to adjourn, non-debatable. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Bye all, have a good week. Good holidays.